Good morning, my loves. Chapter 2 of Walk Two Moons. It's called The Chickabiddy Starts a Story. It was after all the adventures of Phoebe that my grandparents came up with a plan to drive from Kentucky to Ohio, where they would pick me up, and then the three of us would drive 2,000 miles west to Lewiston, Idaho. This is how I came to be locked in a car with them for nearly a week. It was not a trip that I was eager to take, but it was one that I had to take. Gramps had said, "We'll see the whole ding-dong country." Gramps squeezed my cheeks and said, "This trip will give me a chance to be with my favorite chickabiddy again." I am, by the way, their only chickabiddy. My father said that Graham couldn't read maps worth a hill of beans, and that he was grateful that I had agreed to go along and help them find their way. I was only 13, and although I did have a way with maps, it was not really because of that skill that I was going, nor was it to see the whole ding-dong country that Graham and Gramps were going. The real reasons were buried beneath piles and piles of unsaid things. Some of the real reasons were Graham and Gramps wanted to see Mama, who was resting peacefully in Lewiston, Idaho. Graham and Gramps knew that I wanted to see Mama, but I was afraid to. Dad wanted to be alone with Margaret Cadaver, the red-headed lady. He had already seen Mama, and he had not taken me. Also, although this wasn't as important, Dad did not trust Graham and Gramps to behave themselves along the way unless they had me with them. Dad said that if they tried to go on their own, he would save everyone a lot of time and embarrassment by calling the police and having them arrested before they even left the driveway. It might sound a bit extreme for a man to call the police on his own tottery old parents, but when my grandparents got into a car, trouble just naturally followed them like a filly trailing behind a mare. My grandparents, Hiddle, were my father's parents, and they were full up to the tops of their heads with goodness and sweetness. And mixed in with all that goodness and sweetness was a large dash of peculiarity. This combination made them interesting to know, but you could never predict what they would do or what they would say. Once it was settled that the three of us would go, the journey took on an alarming, expanding need to hurry that was like a walloping great thundercloud assembling around me. During the week before we left, the sound of the wind was, "Hurry, hurry, hurry," and at night, even the silent darkness whispered, "Rush, rush, rush." I did not think we would ever leave, and yet I did not want to leave. I did not really expect that I would survive the trip. But I had decided to go, and I would go, and I had to be there by my mother's birthday. This was extremely important. I believed that if there was any chance to bring my mother back home, it would happen on her birthday. If I had said this aloud to my father or to my grandparents, they would have said that I might as well try to catch a fish in the air. So I did not say it aloud, but I believed it. Sometimes I am as ornery and stubborn as an old donkey. My father says I lean on broken reeds and will get a face full of swamp mud one day. Ornery means cranky, because donkeys are cranky. When at last Graham and Gramps Hiddle and I set out that first day of the trip, I prayed for the first 30 minutes solid. I prayed that we would not be in an accident. I was terrified of cars and buses. And that we would get there by my mother's birthday, 7 days away. And that we would bring her home. Over and over, I prayed the same thing. I prayed to trees. This was easier than praying directly to God. There was nearly always a tree nearby on the road. As we pulled onto the Ohio Turnpike, which is the flattest, straightest piece of road in God's whole creation, Graham interrupted my prayers. Salamanca. I should explain right off that my real name is Salamanca Tree Hiddle. Salamanca, my parents thought, was the name of the Indian tribe to which my great-great-grandmother belonged. But my parents were mistaken. The name of the tribe was Seneca. But since my parents did not discover their error until after I was born, and they were by then used to my name, it remained Salamanca. My middle name, Tree, comes from your basic tree, a thing of such beauty to my mother that she made it a part of my name. She wanted to be more specific and use sugar maple tree, her very favorite tree, but Salamanca sugar maple tree Hiddle was a bit much even for her. My mother used to call me Salamanca, but after she left, only my grandparents Hiddle called me Salamanca when they were not calling me Chickabiddy. To most other people, I was Sal, and to a few boys who thought they were being especially amusing, I was Salamander. In the car, as we started our long journey to Lewiston, Idaho, my grandmother Hiddle said, "Salamanca, why don't you entertain us?" "What sort of thing do you have in mind, Gram?" Gramps said, "Well, how about a story? Spin us a yarn." I certainly do know heaps of stories, but I learned most of them from Gramps. Gram suggested I tell one about my mother. That I could not do. I had just reached the point where I could stop thinking about her every minute of every day. Gramps said, "Well then, what about your friends? You got any tales to tell about them?" Instantly, Phoebe Winterbottom came to mind. There was certainly a hog's belly full of things to tell about her. "I could tell you an extensively strange story," I warned. "Oh, good," Graham said. "Delicious." And that is how I happened to suspend my tree prayers and tell them about Phoebe Winterbottom, her disappearing mother, and the lunatic. And that's how chapter 2 ends. What do you think? We'll discuss it. See you later.